Before we start this week's video, I'd like to thank everyone for watching these videos, and please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We're very close to reaching 1,000 subscribers here on this channel. It is our goal to reach that by the end of the year. Let's do this, guys. Thank you all again for watching, and enjoy the video.
Welcome to Film Fu, where the cuts receives the kicks. I'm Shifu Pain, and film is an interesting medium.
Going as far back as the late 1800s, involving a series of pictures taken and stringed together to simulate movement and then watched by people. Saying it like that kind of puts into perspective the abstract oddity of it. Sitting in a dark room and watching what's basically a glorified slideshow. The medium has evolved and improved since then, to be sure, but who would have thought that this is what one of our primary pieces of media would be?
And a film that is hailed as one of the greatest of pictures is the film that we're going to be taking a look at today, Seven Samurai.
Released in 1954, Seven Samurai, or Shishin no Samurai, stars Toshiro Mifune, Takashi Shimura, and Isao Kimura as the primary leads. Directed by Akira Kurosawa, who also wrote the screenplay with Shinobu Hashimoto. The film questions the duty of the samurai and the choices faced by this sort of class, of duty to their cause or duty to justice, as well as a question of status, with there being the subtextual exploration of what makes a samurai, their status or their sense of justice, with there also being the exploration of humanity, and if theirs is a role that even allows them to be human in a world which requires them to be soldiers. So without much further delay, let's take a look at the plot. A band of 7 samurai,
No shit.
or actually ronin, are recruited to fortify and defend a village from a tribe of bandits that have been threatening the livelihoods and lives of this village. Along the way, these samurai learn to get along with each other, grow more attached to this village, and question what it actually means to be a samurai.
Coming in at just under 3.5 hours, is that all? This film follows 3 parts. The recruiting of the Ronin, the fortification of the village, and the defending of the village. The runtime makes it sound bloated and meandering, but it actually uses this time to help us get to know the characters, as well as help to sympathize with this village before we have to defend it.
With so many characters to juggle, the film loosely follows the 5-man band trope, with the wise and stoic leader, the strategic lancer, the wide-eyed heartful youth, the brash and arrogant loner, the experienced loner, the comedic relief, and the 7th one.
I mean, with so many characters, someone would be left out.
With any characters going less through arcs and more interacting with each other and playing around before crunch time. But with that being said, characters do get more attention than others, with Kikuchiro, Shimada, and Katsushiro in particular being the more fleshed out, as they explore the potential sacrifices and consequences of the life of a samurai. Kikuchiro has a bold and energetic personality, and even though I said he fits the loner trope, he does also feel the comedy relief by being the butt of the jokes. But in truth, any brash or arrogant facade actually covers a lot of pain. We find out, for example, that he is the son of a farmer, rather than from nobility, and later that he was orphaned when he was a toddler from a bandit raid similar to this one. It's in the subtext, but it questions the qualifications for being a samurai, because he's not a traditional one. He's not a noble, no money, no master, but he does stand up to fight when it is the time to fight, and he eventually even gives his life to take down the lead bandit.
Is it the status that makes someone a samurai, or is it the conviction of laying down someone's life?
Katsushiro, on the other hand, is the heart of the group, the wide-eyed youth who initially enters the fray wanting to become a disciple or student of Shimada. He eventually starts a relationship with Shino, a girl from the village. Eventually, when the threat is over, they are forced to separate as their individual roles and places in society prevent them from being together. This again questions what a samurai is, as it seems as though samurai can only have a place on the battlefield. They're scrutinized and looked down upon for being in a relationship.
If this was a stereotypical rom-com, he'll be able to marry Shino, still be a samurai, happy ending.
But this is not a place for happy endings, as society calls Katsushiro to the fight, and only the fight. It's very much a tragedy, as Katsushiro began the film seeking out Shimada as his master, wanting to be a samurai, and then his choice forces him to sacrifice a part of his humanity as well as his youth.
Ironic.
But we're not on this channel to explore the characters, much as I do it. We're here to take a look at the action. The action in this film is not the standard fare, and that's because it's not really a martial arts film. In fact, it's a lot closer to drama, but I digress. The action here is far quicker and much more simplistic, less drawn out and more realistic. It's all about the foreplay and the build-up before the big moment. It's sort of like old westerns in that way.
This short exchange is had during the first act of the film, as Shimada and Katsushiro recruit Ronin for the mission. The one they recruit for this being Kyuzu. Kyuzu is another loader type, but more the professional stoic type, more interested in bettering his abilities than receiving pay or glory, and that's demonstrated in this scene. It starts with Kyuzu and this random samurai having a sparring match. Kyuzu assumes a stance called Sha no Kame, while his opponent assumes Jodan no Kame. The sparring match has the opponent rush towards Kyuzu, with it being one of those cases where there's disagreement about who won. The short characterization here is of note. Kyuzu, unshakable, simply states that he won the bout, short and to the point. It's his opponent that gets up in arms, displaying such hubris. How could he have lost? He's a samurai. He can't lose. It must be a draw. It displays something in psychology, known as the backfire effect, where someone believes in an incorrect fact, and then when corrected or proven otherwise, they dig even further into their convictions rather than reassess, as it is seen as an attack on the identity, and a trigger for the fight or flight response. So quick to not have his identity shaken, he resorts to fighting, drawing his sword in an effort to prove his ability. Kyuzu, still being realistic and logical, points out how wasteful this is, and with a slight movement from Kyuzu, the opponent retreats backwards, resuming Jodan no Kame, clearly intent on proving his worth with the sword in exactly the same way. Kyuzu at first assumes Shigen no Kame, but then transitions back to Sha no Kame. As Shimada commentates, it's exactly the same fight, with the same outcome. While Kyuzu is still calm and unmoving, his opponent is now shaking. Adrenaline is taking over, and as anyone who practices sparring will tell you, letting adrenaline take over is never a good thing. You start panicking, overreacting, not thinking, and just doing anything. As the opponent rushes, Kyuzu strikes and kills him.
That whole section lasted only about a minute, but it gives you a good idea of what sort of action you can expect to see in this film. Very quick, very realistic, and highly subtextual character interaction.
And that extends into the themes as well. We've already covered the themes explored by Katsushiro and Kikuchiyo, but let's actually go back to Kikuchiyo, because his interactions reveal a fair lot about his character. For starters, when the mill on the outskirts of the village is burnt down, he's desperate to save the people trapped there. While the mother and child of the family get out without problem, the patriarch and husband are both still trapped and killed in the fire. You can see the pain and agitation in his face as he is desperate to save the men. This is where we find out about him being orphaned in a raid as a child, just showing how much he wishes to not have people lose loved ones in the same way he did. Not to mention that his reaction to the death of Heiichi is the most pronounced and most dramatic. Clearly, he takes death the hardest, most likely due to his abandonment. It also accounts even more for his arrogant exterior. He covers up the pain and feeling of loss by being cynical and boastful the whole time, so as to prevent people from getting too close, putting up walls between himself and others in a form of repression, protecting himself and having a protective exterior until the events of the raid bring it all back.
Is it okay to have someone going through a lot of trauma and clearly going through a lot of shit be the butt of the joke? Yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
When we get to the ending of the film, as the day is saved and the people of the village celebrate and sing of their freedom, the Ronin that are left, Shimada, Katsushiro, and Gorobi, quietly leave the village, passing by the graves of those that were lost in the battle. Despite the victory for the farmers and members of the village, it's a somber affair for the 3 samurai that are left. As Shimada says, they lost. They lost 4 friends. They lost some of their humanity. They lost their freedom and youth. It's a running theme of samurai existing only on the battlefield. Katsushiro cannot be with Shino due to his status in society. With all this experience, Shimada seems to tire of battle and either wants to stop or wants to die, but has to go on. Kikuchiyo lost everything at a young age and turned to a life of war, shirking a regular life and wanting to only exist as a ghost of battle because the pain was too great. This sort of outcome is something very much similar to reality. Too often, veterans or those that have served in the armed forces are unemployed or left homeless. The Royal British Legion estimates that 120,000 veterans exist unemployed in the UK, with the number of homeless veterans existing at 3 to 6% of the homeless population. But they commented that it's difficult to know for certain, as the homeless are considered an invisible statistic. Those Ronin that leave the village lose much, while the villagers that employed them, who were desperate and had nothing, rejoice and celebrate on the backs of the dead.
So with all of that being said, and with everything being considered here, what are we left with?
First of all, on the martial arts side, the importance of remaining cool under pressure cannot be overstated. Letting adrenaline take over or disregard thinking through actions is costly during a sparring session or in general. Sure, you could win by only using your fists and strength, but if you use your mind and think as quickly as you act, you'll be more likely to get ahead.
Finally, the consequences of war are high and are not often talked about. Those that come home often do so with physical and mental scars scars, PTSD, amputation, disability. We memorialise the fallen, put up statues, and remember those lives that were lost. But what do we do for the lives that come home? What do we do for those veterans that are bruised and in need of support? Do we not want to think about the consequences of war that we profit from? This is a true story. I was walking home from university one evening, walking to the train station, when I noticed a guy that was sitting on the side of the street. So I went over to him and went to give him some change. I didn't have a lot with me, so I gave him a £2 coin. I had barely taken 10 steps away from this guy when this older lady came up to me and said, "You were very nice for doing that, but it was a waste. He'll just use that on drugs and alcohol." That shook me, as I can imagine it would shake many people. To hear that that's the attitude of someone. The fact that someone could have this sort of opinion of someone that they don't even know, someone that clearly is in need of help and support. We accept war, but we don't deal with the ramifications. We're okay with sending people to war, but we don't want to deal with the fallout when they come home. We blame them for being homeless rather than actually consider that maybe there are other things at fault here. Huge systemic problems, as well as the idea that it could happen to anyone. It could happen to you. No one should hesitate before helping others. It's not a state of everyone being out for themselves. We are a social species. We have a responsibility to each other to help each other up at the worst of times. We, as a species, only profit by building each other up, not tearing each other down.
While it is always best to believe in oneself, a little help from others can be a great blessing.
Thank you for watching this week's video, and let me know in the comments section if you've seen this film and what you thought of it. I personally thought that it did kind of drag in some places, and that kind of would happen if you have a 3-hour-long film. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, especially on the second viewing. And until next time, everyone, peace be with you.